Hi, I'm going to show you how to make this fun Lego cake. It looks absolutely spectacular and it's really clever the way it looks like the top of the icing has been cut and obviously reveals the Lego cake underneath. So there's a few techniques I want to show you, but really it is quite simple if you just follow step by step. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to prepare the board because the board as you can see looks like a Lego brick, and the way that we do these clever little building bricks here is by using this silicone mould here. So let's get cracking. I'm just going to move that out of the way. I'm going to take a board, I've got a pink board here, and I've got some lovely pink sugar paste, and I'm going to cover my board. So just a nice generous sprinkling of icing sugar. Polish out the icing sugar. That's it. And then I'm going to roll this nice and thin. We don't want it thick on the board. Okay. Now I'm going to put a little brush of water onto our board just to make sure it's going to stick. So just a little bit, make sure it doesn't go right to the edges, just in the middle, and then just lift onto the board and just make sure it covers it. Okay, and then I'm going to take this ingenious little texture sheet, and as you can see it's just got raised sort of almost bubbles really, or polka dots, and I'm just going to lay it on the top of my sugar paste, and then either with your hands or here I've got a plastic smoother, put some pressure down onto your smoother and it will emboss the sugar paste. Now remember, we only really need to concentrate on the outer edges because the cake is going to be sitting in the middle. Just keep checking it just to make sure you've got that good pattern coming through. Look, that's perfect. Great. And then turn it round. I'm going to do the same on this side. Just try and match it up as best you can. That's it. And then again around this outer side. Great. Okay. So then we're going to lift up the board, and then with a palette knife or a sharp kitchen knife you can just cut around the board. Perfect. Okay, so as you can see it hasn't embossed so well in the middle here, but it doesn't matter because we only need the outside here. As long as that's done well, that's fine. And I'm going to leave that to dry. Okay, so we're going to cover the cake and everything off the board and then put the cake onto the board at a later date. So we're going to set that to one side. So now I'm going to make the Lego bricks. I'm using just normal sugar paste, ready to roll icing, but I'm using it in a silicone mould, and sometimes sugar paste can be very soft, so we need something to toughen it up a little bit. So I'm actually adding some Sugarcel CMC into the mix. Okay, now you might wonder how much you need. It really depends on what job you're doing with it, etc., but we want this to work quite quickly, so I would suggest that you get yourself a fistful of sugar paste and then just put a little channel in the middle of it, and then I would just sprinkle probably a quarter of a teaspoon into a fistful of sugar paste and then mix it together. Now this isn't going to work straight away, you need to really do this and then just leave it for 10 minutes just for it to start activating. But these three little bits here I have already put CMC in them, so we can use those straight away. But as soon as you've fully incorporated all that powder, stick it into a plastic bag and just leave it just to develop. Okay, so back to our building bricks mould. Now I've got here a cornflour pouch, so it's basically a muslin filled with cornflour, which is a necessity really when using this silicone mould, because you need to just douse the mould with the cornflour. I mean, we are going to tap it out, but it's really important that the whole surface of the mould gets a really nice velvety dusting of this non-stick powder. Okay, now I also like to add a little bit of cornflour just to the outside of my sugar paste with added CMC, because that gives it a non-stick velvety feel as well. Okay, so I'm just going to take a little bit, I'm going to put it into a shape in my mould, and then I'm going to, from the middle, I'm going to cut outwards with my palette knife, and then again the other side from the middle outwards, and that will shape your mould perfectly, your brick perfectly, and then it should just tap out. Now have a dusting brush to hand, because if you do have any excess corn flour, then you can just brush it off straight away. So just to prove that this can be done with any of the colours, I'm going to take this long brick here, again in the middle and cut to the end, in the middle and cut to the end, and just tap it out. Okay, so if you do prepare your sugar paste properly by putting the CMC into it and then just rolling it with a little bit of corn flour, it will make the job so much easier. Now, as you can see, I've been busy making all of these bricks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the cake in and show you how to put them onto the side of the cake. Okay, so I've brought my cake into shop, but as you can see, it's actually not a cake. It's a dummy, but you're obviously going to be using a yummy real cake. But stick with me on this one, because I'm using a dummy cake. So I'm going to do exactly the same as what you would do. You would obviously put buttercream or a jam or something onto your side of your cake, but I'm just using a piping gel just to glue my sugar paste. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to make almost like a get out clause, because when you're putting all of these Lego bricks together, if they don't sit all perfectly, you'll be able to see the cake through the joins. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of the colours, so I'm going to do pink because obviously that's what I've covered my board in, and I take one of the colours, and all I'm going to do is just cut a triangle out, and then from the middle here I'm just going to put that around the side, so that's where my Lego is going to go. Okay, so if it doesn't join perfectly, all you'll see through it is pink colour rather than cake or obviously white polystyrene dummy. So now I'm going to start putting my bricks on. This is the exciting part, obviously. Now make sure you dust all the corn flour off. Now you're not going to get it all off, it's not going to be absolutely perfect, but that doesn't matter, because we do have another get out plan, which is this amazing edible glaze spray. Now this is totally edible, obviously, but what it does is it will put a really shiny plastic sort of look onto our Lego bricks, which makes it look really, really, really realistic. But another thing that it does is take away all the corn flour and all the mustiness. So you'll see that a little bit later. So I'm just going to take my edible glue, or you're going to use edible glue or water as well. Just a nice light coating of this all over that triangle of sugar paste, and then I'm just going to start building up my pattern. Don't push it too much, because you don't want to get rid of the, you know, the little brick pattern that you have so painstakingly made. That's it. I'll get up so I can see what I'm doing. That's it. You can also use these little skinny ones. Just try and make it as exciting as you can. Now, don't forget to go horizontal as well as vertical. That's it. But I think you'll probably see that the idea is that it's the variety and the colours and the shapes and the sizes is what's really, really important. So I'm going to finish this because you don't want to watch me do this. And I'll come back to you when the whole of this triangle is covered in my bricks. So as you can see, I've covered the whole of my emergency triangle, as I like to call it, with the building bricks. And it's still looking a little bit cloudy where we've used all the cornflour. So this is where my magical edible glaze spray comes in. So I'm going to protect my surfaces by putting it into the lid of a cake box. So nice good old spray of the edible glaze spray. And then with short, sharp squirts, we're going to cover the whole of the building bricks with it. Okay. Now I've got some excess ones that I haven't used on the cake. Put those into the box as well and give those a little squirt because they can be used just to scatter around the board on the top of the cake at the end. Okay. So once I've done that, I can lift it out, and can you see how lovely and shiny that looks? Now while we're at it, we can also spray our cake board. Now obviously this isn't going to fit into that little cake lid, but try and do this sort of in an aerated room. Obviously we've got a bit of air circulation, but again just around the outside, just short sharp squirts, and then one big one like that. And as you can see, I haven't bothered wasting it for the middle, but around the outside we've now got that really lovely shiny plastic look. So let's leave that over to that side. Okay, so now we're going to cover the cake. So we're going to do this in a bit of a different way to just normally covering a cake. Now let me move that over there. Now make sure you've got your cake with the buttercream and everything on it. In fact, I need to prepare my cake, don't I? So I'm going to just give it a nice coating of piping jelly, just to make it nice and sticky so that my sugar paste does stick to it. Okay, so I've covered my dummy with my edible glue or my piping gel, and I've kneaded my sugar paste so it's nice and soft. So we're going to roll out, make sure nice dusting of icing sugar and one on the top, and then just roll out as you normally would to cover your cake. Okay. Okay, that's about right. I always measure whether I've rolled it out enough. Using my rolling pin, the top and down, that's about the length of a rolling pin, and that's what I've got here, so that's perfect. So I'm now going to take a palette knife, and from the middle, yeah, I'd say that's probably about the middle, I'm just going to cut, okay, down. And then I'm afraid I'm going to have to do this pointing at me. Move that over a little bit. So I'm going to cover my cake. I'm going to take the cut, obviously that's going to go over, it's going to go over my Lego, that's it. Okay, so just make sure that you've covered all of your cake around the outsides. And can you see that I've used that cut for that Lego part? So make sure you concentrate on getting this all beautifully covered. Okay, and then when we come round to this part here, let me try and do this so that you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to take this and just thin it out so it looks like it's torn. In fact, you can take some of these bits and tear them. Okay. It's supposed to give the idea that this has been torn away. Okay. There we go. Whoever thought it was going to be okay to be tearing your sugar paste on the top of your cake? But I think you'll agree it looks really effective. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so round the bottom here, let's make it a bit more dramatic. That's it, and tear big lumps away. That's it. Perfect. Okay, so now we've got that, we can just cut the excess away around the sides of the cake. That's it. There we go. If you want to use a smoother, you can. In fact, I can see that I'm hiding some of my Lego there. Make sure you show all of your Lego. You've worked very hard to create it, so make sure that you get maximum viewing of the Lego. And then let's take our sprayed cake. Now remember, I'm using a dummy here, so it's going to look very, very easy for me to put this on the board. But obviously you're not. You're using a real cake, so you probably need a bigger palette knife, or if you've got one of these cake lifters or something, you need to lift it onto the middle of the board. But obviously I'm just using polystyrene, so I'm going to have to just put a little bit of sticky piping gel just to keep the cake there. And then I'm going to easily lift my cake onto the middle of the board. But as I say, you need to probably use 2 palette knives or a cake lifter. Okay, and that really is it. I mean, we can use some edible glue to put these additional parts on to make it look even more realistic. And as you can probably see, let me move this one in. Can you see that I've taken some children's Lego men and added them to the mix? And if you've got a Lego fanatic, whether it be a child or an adult, I think that you'll agree that they'll be totally and utterly ecstatic and dumbfounded when you present them with your amazing Lego cake.